You know, we all sit here and listen to the trials and tribulations within our own community and frequently say, thank God that wasn't my community. Listening to the situation that happened in Berkeley with the tragedy on the patios of buildings, the people who died in the Santa Rosa and the Northern California fires, and we all, I think, subconsciously say, thank God that wasn't me. And a couple weeks ago, I stood on this floor to honor the memory of a firefighter and an older retired attorney who were the two victims in the Thomas Fire, which was and is the largest wildfire ever to occur in California in December, extraordinary in and of itself, in my district. And I adjourned and said something to the effect that this was almost a miracle, that only 2 people died, as a good portion of my district burned up. Well, I stand today because that miracle has turned into a nightmare. I'm sure many of you have seen, whether it's on the Oprah show or in the newspaper, photographs of what happened on the night of January 9th. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when the good people of Montecito, which is not only in my district, but these are my neighbors. Many of these people who lost their homes are very close friends of mine. I know some of the victims who died, who perished that night. So I stand before you as not only the representative of this community, not only someone who stood here, I won't say in a cocky fashion, but with great relief, acknowledged the tragic passing of a firefighter who helped to fight this terrible fire, and a woman who had a tragic death as a result. But stand here today to recite the names of 21 people who were literally swept away by a mudslide that occurred when those hills that were completely denuded by this fire just a couple weeks before came tumbling down, literally tumbling down, and swept people up to 3 miles onto the freeway, and we think even into the ocean while they slept. Who were these people? Well, they were people who looked like you and me. They were hardworking people who worked at low-paying jobs. They were people who were hand surgeons in town who had just the month before actually done the hand surgery on my stepdaughter. They were people who were cousins of very dear friends of mine. They were people who were immigrants from Thailand who had come over here to live the promised world of working hard, and they did. The incident occurred, and I don't want to call it an incident. That's the way it's referred to by our law enforcement people, who, by the way, were extraordinary. This night, at 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a rain cell that came over Montecito. The rains up until then had been drizzles, sort of like what we had in Sacramento yesterday. So people said, oh, the rain is going to pass us. At 3 o'clock in the morning, a rain cell stopped over Montecito and dumped ½ an inch of rain in 5 minutes. And the hills collapsed, sending boulders the size of trucks down through this sleeping community. And in an irrational way, at least maybe not to nature, but to the people who lived there, literally blew people out of their homes and into this mud hurdle that, as I sadly had to see it, I was wanting to resist, but as in my job, it was important that I actually see what had happened. So that amount of rain tumbled the hillside. Think of a lava flow, if any of you have seen pictures and recreations of when Mount Vesuvius blew, and that lava flow came through Pompeii and just destroyed a whole city. That's what this mudslide was like. And it left 15 feet of mud on what was once the freeway for a period of about 3 miles. I have a friend who left her home seeing, because fires were created, because gas pipes broke by these boulders that came tumbling down. Thousands of them, by the way. There are thousands of them. She tried to get in her car and was almost swept away on the freeway. She was collected, fortunately, by our first responders, who literally picked up over 50 people. They were able to save and airlift over 50 people at 3 o'clock in the morning. They couldn't see anything. The winds were 50, 60 miles an hour. It's pouring rain, and yet they went out and saved 50 people, including the dude who lives in Montecito, Jeff Bridges. And he was interviewed, and I want to just share with you a comment he made when he was interviewed the other day. He said, you know, this reminds me of a line from a movie I was in 1984, Starman, if you ever saw that movie. He said, one of his lines was a line that he remembered clearly, and that was, you know what I love most about you humans? You are at your very best when things are at their worst. And so this community came together. There are now 28 people who have been in the hospital. There are 23 victims. We have recovered 21 of them. There is still a 2-year-old missing and a 17-year-old boy missing. And so we take a deep breath. I take a deep breath. This has been very personal to me. I suspect many of you in this room know people who lived through this experience or who failed to live through this experience. And so I want to ask for your indulgence as I conclude by reading the names and ages of these 21 victims. And I know that you will join me in extending your deepest condolences to the families, to the community of Montecito for these unimaginable losses. We will rebuild. We are, as human beings, very resilient. Not just yet. And so I ask you to join with me extending prayers to the victims, and in particular to the Benitez family, which lost 4 of its family members, to the Taylor Satatepa family, which lost 3 of their members, and the missing 2-year-old is a member of their family. So we will rebuild. We will come together, and as we have as a community, and as a reminder that Mother Nature extends her fury when she is not happy with us. And as I have reminded my community, this is the beginning of winter. And we have 220,000 acres of land that is without brush, without trees, without any ground cover to protect us when the next rains come. So I ask you all to join me in adjourning in the memory of Dr. Mark Montgomery, age 54. Carolyn Montgomery, his daughter, age 22. Joseph Francis Bleckel, age 87. Martin Cabrera Munoz, age 48. Alice Mitchell, age 78, and her husband James Mitchell, 89. They were celebrating his birthday that night. John McManigal, age 61, dad of 6, good tennis player from my tennis club. Rebecca Riskin, age 61. Roy Roeder, age 84. Josephine Gower, age 69. David Canton, age 49, whose son is still missing. Morgan Corey, age 25. Sawyer Corey, age 12. Kayla Benitez, age 3. Marilyn Ramos, age 27. Jonathan Benitez, age 10. Fabiola Benitez Calderon, age 28. Panit Sutitepa, age 30. Perawat Pasta Sutitepa, age 6. Grandfather Richard Loring Taylor of the family, age 79. Peter Floret, age 73. And I want to thank the governor for declaring today a day of remembrance of the Montecito mudslide. I want to thank the community for coming together, and I especially want to thank our first responders. This is government at its best. We had 8,500 people staffing that fire. We had hundreds of people coming together in the middle of the night to try to save our community. People who risked their lives and who have stayed over weeks to comfort the community, to try to find and put closure for those who lost loved ones, and who gave their very best to the people of my community. I would ask you all to join me in adjourning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, for making sure that we don't forget any of these folks who survived the fires and had this tragedy strike. Please make sure all their names are brought forward.